Good morning. Whether you're watching this service in person, streaming live, viewing it from another time zone, or watching it later on video, we are glad you are part of our community and are joining us today. We welcome everyone to this place of comfort, spirit, justice, and hope. We are Unitarian Universalists. We begin our worship today with a prelude by our accompanist Joy Heft. If you have a candle or chalice at home, I invite you to join me as I light ours in the sanctuary. We hallow this time together by kindling the lamp of our heritage. Our opening words today will be a responsive reading, and you all are C in bold. This reading is called A Spacious Welcome, and it was written by Sherry Woodbury. Welcome, who come in friendship, who long for genuine community. Welcome, who come in curiosity, full of questions or simply open. Welcome, who come heavy with fatigue, weary from the troubles of the world or the troubles of your particular life. Welcome, who come with joy for flowing rivers and gentle breeze, for changing skies and great trees. Welcome, who come with thanks for the altruism of the earth and the gift of human care. Come, let us celebrate together this wondrous life. Our first hymn, I just found out, is the exact same tune as our last hymn, so we'll practice it this time. Our hymn number 1 is Earth Was Given as a Garden, number 207. It's the same tune as Blue Boat Home. Tree of Our first reading is by Brené Brown. A deep sense of love and belonging is an irreducible need of all people. We are biologically, cognitively, physically, and spiritually wired to love, to be loved, and to belong. When those needs are not met, we don't function as we were meant to. We break, we fall apart, we numb, we ache, we hurt others, we get sick. Next is our joys and sorrows, and we have stones again. This is the second week we've had the stones back. So the stones represent our joys and our sorrows, and place one or several in the water. You can come up this aisle and place your stones in the water bowl. May we all hold a space of comfort and support for ourselves and each other. At this time, we will have our meditation. This week, I would like to begin with a grounding and breathing technique that will last around a minute, followed by regular breathing and an extended silence. And then I will ring the bowl to complete the meditation. I always want the meditation to go longer than it does, so since I'm up here, it's going to go longer than normal. Not too long, though. So the breathing is a very simple thing that you can do on your own at any time. It really calms down the nervous system, and I use it pretty regularly in my everyday life. You just take a deep breath in through your nose and just imagine the breath going down to the bottom of your belly, and then a slow exhale through your mouth so that the exhale is about twice as long as the inhale. We're going to do that for about a minute. And then just go to normal breathing. And I invite you to think of an affirmation to hold in your mind, something that neutralizes anything negative that you might be feeling or something you'd like to change in the world. And we'll just have a time of silence right now. Please remain seated for our second hymn. How could anyone on in the blue hymnal 1053. In late 1994, I was a stay-at-home mom with two young children. My son was 3.5 years old and my baby daughter 7 months. I was what some might describe as a crunchy mom when I eschewed mainstream child-rearing practices with co-sleeping, home birthing my daughter, extended breastfeeding, and a plan to homeschool. A kindred spirit friend of mine had recommended a book to me, The Continuum Concept by Jean Liedloff. My friend chose to let the book speak for itself and not tell me much of what it was about, but that she loved it and thought I would too. I ended up devouring the book in 2 days, even though I had young children at home taking up most of my time and attention. It was one of those books that changed my life profoundly and shifted my beliefs and paradigms, so much so that after finishing it, I immediately wanted to be airlifted into the indigenous village that was the setting of the book and live there forever. After turning the last page, I remember sitting on the floor in my son's bedroom for a long time while he played with his trucks and his cars and my baby nearby, while I just stared into space, not sure of what I knew anymore or what I was feeling, but knowing that my worldview had forever changed. I soon contacted the author as her phone number was at the back of the book. I felt compelled to let her know how much her book had meant to me. I was not alone in this, and at the end of our conversation, she let me know that she provides parenting coaching sessions if I was interested, to help parents radically change from Western parenting practices. I signed up for my first sessions right away. The continuum concept is about Jean's experiences in the 1960s of living with the Yaquana, an indigenous tribe in South America. She ended up making several trips there, totaling about 2 years. This all began during a time when Jean was a young 20-something, unattached with a desire for travel and adventure. She had been invited by two Italians whom she met in the UK, who were planning a diamond hunting expedition to the jungles of South America. Although it wasn't the word diamonds that caught Jean's interest, but the word jungle. During their expedition, they came upon a remote indigenous tribe that had had no previous contact with Westerners. Jean decided to stay with the Yaquana instead of continuing on with the diamond expedition. She quickly became fascinated with the ease at which all of the tribe's relationships were, and that they were the happiest, most generous people she had ever known. There were no terrible twos, no rebellious teenagers, no fighting partners, no ill will between them of any kind. She had been there 3 weeks before she realized she had never heard a baby cry, and when she finally did, it was quickly attended to, and the crying and fussiness ended. She noticed that the babies' bodies were much softer than Western babies, with no stiffness whatsoever, as if their stress-free time in the womb was extended to their life and early months outside of it. By constantly being carried by either the mother or another child or relative or another member of the village. She posited that carrying the babe on a busy, engaged caregiver's body helped to absorb and release the baby's own energy, thereby keeping them naturally relaxed. The babies were carried for many months until they were ready to walk, after which they were not carefully watched, by our standards at all. The Yaquana trusted that their species had an innate sense of safety, which is borne out, for instance, by witnessing very young tots going to the edge of a deep hole and not falling in, being trusted to not fall in, and they didn't. Even though the babies were carried everywhere and all ages were in their midst, the Yaquana were not child-centered. Village life was adult-centered, with children in the periphery, watching their elders live their lives and joining in when they showed interest, without force, without bribery, without punishment or shaming. In my first phone session with Jean, she asked me about a current struggle I was having with my children. I was still in the easier phase of parenting my baby, but my 3-year-old was mostly delightful, but was sometimes obstinate in ways that me and my culture expect 2 and 3-year-olds to be at times. I told her the issue of late was getting him into the car seat. He loved to go places in the car, but suddenly he began to rebel when it was time to be secured in the seat. A back and forth power struggle would ensue, where eventually I would, of course, win because we needed groceries. He would be crying, and I would feel terrible. She talked about how the Aquana's belief systems are such that they believe children are inherently social and want to do the expected thing, and they do. If they veer from expected social norms, they are simply shown how things are done there with ease and without power struggles or shaming or punishment. She asked me if I were to change my beliefs about my son, how would I behave with him? If I believe that he wants to be obstinate because that's just how 3-year-olds are sometimes, I'm going to be expecting a problem before it even starts. My body tensing up beforehand, waiting for the rebellious behavior because that is how it had been, and that's what I see with other toddlers and parents. If I changed my beliefs that he wants to be social and do what is expected, I'm not going to engage in any power struggle and happily swoop him up and click him in the seat without questioning dialogue, without asking him what he wants, just that it's time to go to the store now and simply and happily go. He never gave me a problem with getting in the car seat again after that. Jean discussed how often we are asking our children what they want to do, thinking we are empowering them with choices, when what we are really doing is confusing and frustrating them by asking a young child what they want instead of just doing what one does as an adult, as a leader. She believed their acting out is more of a plea for more appropriate treatment. They don't want to be in charge until we very clearly signal to them that they are. I also began carrying my baby daughter around on my back with a sling, which was a bit rough as she was now a larger baby, and I didn't have time to gradually build up my muscles by carrying her as she grew. But my body grew stronger and she loved it. I was able to cook and clean and do the things that I needed to do each day without feeling like my activity stopped just because she was awake. Her body would immediately become soft and meld to mine, while she happily slept. I so wished I had read this book prior to having children so they could have experienced the complete and utter emotional safety of the in-arms stage. But I decided to do what I could do now. The thing that I could not recreate, though, was the village. By 1995, most mothers returned to work after having children, requiring daycare for their little ones. Having financial agency in a social life is necessary for anyone, regardless of gender, and having a parent at home during these early years has become nearly impossible for most of us. Sorry, my allergies are acting up today. Although I loved being with my babies, it was also a lonely time for me, and finding other stay-at-home parents to socialize with had to be an intentional search. Luckily, I found a few other parents and kids, but the ability to engage regularly in adult conversation and make a living at the same time was not possible in my civilized world. We had play dates instead, with moms on the periphery and children in the center. I did stop engaging in the child-centered power struggle behaviors of my culture for a time, and noticed our family relating much more peacefully. Then a stressful cross-country move came, and during times of stress is when old habits return. I found it challenging to maintain this new way of thinking and being. Fast forward 27 years with my children grown, and I now understand the missing piece for maintaining my new beliefs long term. I had to heal my own trauma, my own shame that our culture is imbued with, was literally built with. I think there should be a new diagnosis in the DSM-5, a manual that I use regularly in my work as a psychotherapist in order to diagnose disorders, something I've never been very keen on doing, but sometimes we have to keep the powers that be happy. The DSM is about 2 inches thick. If a diagnosis existed that I could actually get behind, it would be something like generalized civilization trauma disorder. the DSM would go from a thick book to a mere pamphlet. Symptoms listed for this disorder would be depression, anxiety, low self-esteem, narcissism, attention and concentration deficit, people-pleasing, extreme mood swings, perfectionism, hypervigilance, antisocial behavior, eating disorders, etc., etc. All of our current diagnoses are simply symptoms of this all-encompassing, made-up diagnosis. The human species has strayed so far from the continuum of living in harmony with nature and with each other, where change is slow and new ideas are adapted or scrapped depending on their usefulness and appropriateness for well-being. If we remain connected to the continuum, a behavior or practice that felt wrong and painful in our own bodies or caused pain in someone else would immediately be tossed out as not useful, never to be done again. Generalized civilization trauma disorder is something that we all have, unfortunately. Some of us have adapted better than others and function okay in it, or at least appear to, but all of us are affected by it. How do I make such a bold statement? As a psychotherapist, I sit all day during my work days with people from every walk of life imaginable. The telehealth platform I work through allows me to provide therapy for people from all over the world. If someone has an internet connection and the means, we can work together. Everywhere from rural and urban America to Europe to South America to Sri Lanka to the Middle East, rich people, not so rich people, different ethnic groups, successful people, lonely people, grieving people, severely traumatized people, but all victims of civilization. Let's connect some dots here. It's not just people who go to therapy who have trauma. Every person in this room, on this earth, has had trauma just from existing here. We come to churches and other places to hopefully find some peace and solace and community and to make sense of it all in whatever ways we can. Trauma is not just big T trauma like sexual assault or being a soldier at war. Trauma is also being shamed in front of the whole class for forgetting to bring back a library book on time. That happened to me in first grade. It's a painful memory etched in my mind and body. Trauma can be a breakup with your first love or any love, the death of a loved one, physical or emotional abuse, being excluded from the group, or a general feeling of never being enough from the many times your caregivers told you you weren't, or implied it with neglect. And the effects of trauma are generally the same. The ways we find to cope are not conscious and deliberate choices that one makes. It is automatic due to the design of our nervous system, which decides for us what kind of coping mechanism we will create in order to survive that situation or any other situation that resembles it in the future. The negative feelings it creates are too painful to feel and process on our own, so we bury it or try to. We act out, we pass it along to others, sometimes in the most seemingly small and nuanced ways. The bottom line is, it's not what's wrong with you, it's what's happened to you. Babies are not born bad, but are born expecting and requiring certain treatment. When that fails, and it always does in civilization to one degree or another, there is trauma. When there is trauma, there are negative beliefs about self, about others, about the world, about danger. And this creates layer upon layer of negative lenses that we view the world through and view others through. And they will remain without an intervention. When I was 22, I went to psychotherapy for the first time. What brought me there was a new relationship and strong feelings of anxiety and fear of abandonment that were coming up. I went for 2 years, and it helped me to have some understanding of how my past environment had affected me. And I learned some coping skills. But it never got to the heart of the matter. Because in the 1980s, the field of psychology did not fully understand how emotional and physical trauma affects our body and emotional world. My field is continually progressing and creating new therapies that can actually heal, not just treat symptoms. What a wondrous thing to discover that people can actually heal instead of walking around in depressed and anxious states, using maladaptive coping skills that our nervous systems came up with on the fly. Those coping mechanisms may create temporary relief, but over the longer term can cause many problems, such as addiction, social isolation, freeze responses, hypervigilance, people pleasing, to just name a few. Liedloff's book highlighted something that needed to be written about and was one of the seminal works for attachment parenting. But what she couldn't address, based on where we were in our understanding of trauma, was shame. It could never be a just do this thing or believe this thing and your kids will magically be little darlings and parenting will be easy peasy. We will always pass on to others what has been done to us in some way, no matter how hard we try not to. And a word about parents and caregivers. They were victims too, and really and truly did the best they could. Our adult selves can understand that and forgive them, maybe. But we must also give voice to that inner child that was mistreated and find a way to feel those feelings if we haven't worked through them. In order to change the world and heal our world, we absolutely must heal ourselves. This is the most sacred and holy work. If we do the deep dive inward, we can start to see how living in a system that was literally built on shame and abuse and colonization has affected us. We will always pass on our own trauma to others unless we heal ourselves. It's also impossible to heal at this level without an intervention of some sort. It doesn't have to be the same intervention for every person, as there are many paths that can lead to healing. But we need to understand how profoundly our societal norms and structures have affected us. We can start to see how the use of shame and guilt is embedded in our systems and all of our institutions and our hierarchies in corporations and governments. How the need for power and control over others, whether it's parents with children, or prison guards with inmates, or teachers with students, or bosses with workers, or sometimes partners with each other. Trauma comes from shame and perpetuates shame and more trauma all at the same time. It's a vicious and literally deadly cycle. The health issues alone have been so clearly connected to emotional and physical trauma through research study after study. Changing our human systems through social justice efforts and voting are absolutely important. But ultimately, if we are truly to change the world, we must, if we wish to survive as a species, go within and do the internal work. It's hard, but we can learn to reparent ourselves and give ourselves grace and unconditional love. We can deepen our understanding that our worth and value is not dependent on anything. This directly connects to our first UU principle, the inherent worth and dignity of every person. It's important that we extend that to ourselves, first and foremost, before we can fully extend that to others. I encourage you to go on that deep dive if you haven't already, whether it's through reading new material, therapy, spiritual practices, especially meditation, and setting necessary boundaries to create emotional safety for oneself. It may involve an apology to someone, but it always involves the realization that we are all doing the best we can with what we know and understand at the time. Just know that I am not talking about sociopaths and psychopaths here, so please don't bring this up to me at coffee hour, as that is a much longer conversation. Today I stand before you and can honestly say, I love you. I love each and every one of you. I can only say that because I've been learning on a deep level to love myself. Not in an egotistical or perfectionistic way, but through grace that I now give to myself and extend outwardly. I wish for deep healing as we journey through this beautiful, chaotic, challenging, painful thing called life. Blessed be to you all. As we approach the time of our offering, give what you will. I invite you to give today when our usher, Robin, who's filling in on the fly here, will collect our offering by either mail or by using the Givelify app. You can use the Givelify app as well. Doing so will help us meet our financial responsibility to you at the end of the year. This morning's offering will most sincerely and gratefully be received. May it be lovingly given. Please join me in our offering prayer, which is projected above. May this offering equip us to inspire love and seek justice. Please rise as you are able and sing our final hymn, a first UU Alton favorite, Blue Boat Home, same tune as the first hymn, number 1064. Why don't you give yours first? What do you got? Mary Johnson. I'll just read them. Okay, so we have some announcements. Mary Johnson needs help in carrying personal care distribution items from her car to the distribution room downstairs. Her car is parked by the Albee Street entrance.
Okay, cool. Couple things. For those of you new, my name is Robin Berkeley, and I am the congregational president here. So welcome. Thank you for being here. We have a meeting after service today regarding any questions or comments you have on the transition plan that has been circulated with you all. So if people are interested in staying and asking questions and offering recommendations on our process, we welcome that. So we'll be meeting right after coffee hour. There's a bunch of snacks out there because Mary Weber dropped them off with me. So it may not look like there was snacks before. There's a table full of snacks now, so we're good. Next, we have need volunteers for next Saturday to come to. We're good. Okay, you're good for okay. Yeah. Say fourth Saturday, as well as Tower Grove Pride. We're going to only be there on Saturday, so if there are people that are willing to come and spend a couple of hours, sit at the table. Pretty much what we did the last time is we handed out candy, we handed out beads, we just let people know our presence was there, and we ended up with a bunch of names that I have to pass on to Mary for people who wanted newsletters and get to know us a little bit more. So that's our goal. It's just to make sure that our presence is seen out there. And I can't tell you how many people stopped by and said, "We're so glad you're here. We're really glad to see you here." And it really meant a lot for us. So if you have any questions on that, just let me know. And then I have one last personal item. I know we did Joys and Sorrows, but my best friend from high school, still my best friend, her oldest daughter just got diagnosed with a incredibly rare form of spinal cancer with very few treatment options. So I had already posted about her, I know, in our UU Friends group, but I'm asking, please, for if you're praying, pray. If you send energy into the universe, please send that healing energy in her direction, because it's not looking good. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Robin. I lost my, hold on. No, I think it just, So please join me as we extinguish our chalice. The light of truth and meaning cannot be put out. We are the keepers of this flame until we meet again. Our closing words today are from Teg Bahadur. Not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. Why do you go to the forest in search of the divine? God lives in all and abides with you too. As fragrance dwells in a flower or reflection in a mirror, so the divine dwells inside everything. Seek therefore in your own heart. The light in me honors the light in you. Namaste and blessed be.
Renee Brown. Good.